Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to this special episode of Watty's channel. Now, this is an episode that I have been wanting to film for a very long time, but just with many of my other videos, I don't like to make the videos unless I'm complete, or at the very least, as close to complete as possible. So, this is always a topic that is very popular for a lot of customizers, a lot of collectors. So, I know this is going to be something that a lot of people is going to gravitate towards and enjoy. Today's video is the downfall of Random Treasures. So, for those who don't know what Random Treasures is, a very brief history. The company is a brick and mortar business run in Rosedale, Maryland. The company, they do sell and buy old and vintage wrestling action figures and accessories, among other collections like G.I. Joes, etc. But the company has actually gained notoriety over the last few years with their incorporation of the vintage 8-inch rubber WWF LJN wrestling action figures of the 1980s. Now, just like the title says, it is the downfall of Random Treasures. Physics tells us that what goes up must come down. So obviously, in order for there to be a downfall, the company must have sustained some kind of level of success before said fall. And at the very beginning, 100% I was on board with the company, as I'm sure a lot of people were. So at the very beginning, you look at some of your more expensive action figures. You were talking about Kamala. We're talking about Harley Race. We're talking about Bam Bam Bigelow. Even your Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Some of these figures that you could go on eBay and probably spend, at the time I was purchasing my collections, anywhere between $60 to $125 on these figures, easy. And you could go to Random Treasures and their new Etsy site, which was xoxcustomsbyrandomtreasures, and purchase these figures for basically a fraction of what you would pay on the open market through shops like Mercari, Etsy, eBay, etc. Now, the biggest change that you would find between the XOX Customs by Random Treasures compared to your original release of the WWF LJN figures was your Series 6 Grand Toys Blackheart series figures. Now, obviously, I've been keeping in contact or keeping in touch with the market, and the market of these figures have gone down dramatically, but as of a few years ago, you couldn't touch a Series 6 original figure for less than $200. And we're talking about the most beat up, paint loss, destroyed figure possible. And you kind of look at it and you think, well, do I really want to shell out $350 for a Ravishing Rick Rude, which has massive paint loss and is just one of the worst action figures aesthetically or playable among any action figure ever created? And the answer is no. And this is why I always said that XOX Customs possibly had the best choice in selection of these particular figures. Because an action figure that you would pay $350 for and pretty beat up, you can get through Random Treasures for around $130 to $150. So when I first learned of XOX Customs, I was absolutely through the moon, in love with the company. Their service was incredible. They take orders to your specifications, and best and most appreciative of is the fact that you're able to get all of these figures that you couldn't really afford otherwise for a fraction of the cost. Now, since then, Random Treasures has done a great job in expanding the LJN roster to include new characters. Problem is, with their expansion of new wrestlers, that's where the downfall would have originated, in my opinion. Now, why is that? I've always said that your Series 6 really were the only figures of value to purchase from XOX Customs. Now, you have your run-of-the-mill general customizers. I'm talking about non-business related folks. I'm talking about people who work out of their kitchen, their basement, their garage. They can repaint an action figure and make it look amazing. I don't I don't really appreciate folks that take perfectly good figures and destroy them. You know, Hasbro by breaking off their bodies, torsos, arms, or the LJNs by cutting up the rubber, etc. But if you've got a figure that is beyond repair or to a level where you know that you just simply can't fix it up and resell it for profit, yeah, if there's no choice in the matter, I wouldn't mind those figures. I have plenty of them. And generally, when a person cuts off the arms or makes new poses, they can create an absolutely brilliant action figure. One of the highlights of Ram Treasures that a lot of folks were kind of gravitating towards is that you're not doing that. You're not chopping off heads, you know, let's say a Dusty Rogue head mold and putting it on a Greg Valentine body, essentially. They were creating their own molds, their own rubber figures. But as we will learn later on in the video, that actually is 100% false. I think with the exception of maybe one or two figures, if that, pretty much every single mold that you got from Ram Treasures did come from, you know, other existing figures, other existing poses. So Print Fury, you know, the guys that design the figures or the rubbers, and of course XOX Customs, they do the paint job on the figures. They could have done a whole lot better selection with their action figures. So today we're going to look at a few of the figures that I really like from the company, as well as some of them that could have done so much better. And when I first started collecting Ram Treasure figures, to me, I kind of felt like I had a blind loyalty towards the company. Meaning I was so grateful to get those early Series 6 pieces for such a small cost, and I love the back and forth, the fact that you didn't have to wait, you know, days or a week to get a response. You know, you usually got it within a few hours. The service was just impeccable, and I was just in love with being able to add these figures and to include adding new roster members so that the line didn't have to officially stop and I could still remain a collector of LJNs. It got to a point where the more and more figures I got in, I really started really paying attention to the figures, and not just being happy that, hey, I can add any or anyone to my roster, but just really paying attention to the figures. And I'm like, these really aren't that good. And of course, once you start lining them up to other existing figures, you just realize that they're just carbon copies of existing figures anyways. So all this junk about, you know, not appreciating, you know, your guy in his basement customizing figures by swapping out heads, essentially that's exactly what Random Treasures does. So I'm trying to think the figure that kind of got me. I think it was the Ultimate Warrior. So the Ultimate Warrior, which they refer to as Volume 2, I looked at the figure, I loved it, great pose, great look. At the end of the day, I've always said it was a figure that did not need to be made. LJN created a far superior LJN, Ultimate Warrior. You really didn't need a new one. Not to mention, they took an Ultimate Warrior that gave him a Warlord body pose. Warlord may be one of my favorite figures, but I think that one could have done better. Soon after... Sorry, I got these figures kind of laid out on the floor, so I'm going to have to bend over from time to time. So, soon thereafter, they came out with Volume 2 of Ravishing Rick Rude. Personally, I completely understand the need to remake Rick Rude, given the fact that the original Rick Rude is possibly classified as the worst action figure among pretty much everyone's opinion. As I've collected more and more figures, I've kind of felt like, you know what, I had Rick Rude as the worst figure all the time because his arms are, well, his arms are this. And then I saw Volume 2, and I'm like, you know, this is Rick Rude, okay? This man deserves a classy action figure. And when I found out that they're making a Series 2 Rick Rude, I'm like, okay, this has got to be the greatest figure ever created. And then we end up getting this, and I'm like, I was so disappointed. I bought the figure, but I really wasn't jumping the gun and purchasing it. And in the past, within minutes of me checking on Etsy and seeing what they had new in their shop, if anything, I'd be purchasing the figure. This one took me a few days to purchase because I just wasn't eager. And as time passed and went on, more and more figures just kept coming out. And I'm going to show it on this figure. I'm not going to take him out of the bag, but hopefully you guys will be able to make it out. So when you look at the top of his head, you'll notice a lot of paint loss, kind of scrape off the hair. And I think that might be it, is just in the hair area. But when you look at the cost of what you're paying for these action figures, and to see the paint job constantly cracking, or you're barely rubbing the figure and the hair comes off like it did with that Rick Rude figure, it kind of really slap in the face. You kind of feel like you're getting ripped off on a consistent basis. I don't remember what the next figure was. I'm thinking after Rick Rude was, I want to say Tully Blanchard. And did I bring... I did not bring out Tully Blanchard. That's fine. I think the only reason I actually purchased a Tully Blanchard at that time, because, again, it was a Galoob Ric Flair figure with a new head mold and a really shoddy chest paint. With guys like Tully Blanchard and Razor Ramon, etc. Even this Iron Mike Sharp guy, what they do with figures like this is they kind of like take little grease stains or something, they kind of smear on the body and then call it, chest hair. This is one of the most shoddy and sorry excuses of customization I've ever seen. I've seen people take George Animal Steel and take like a black Sharpie marker or something and kind of draw on hair onto that figure, and I feel like, what, that is more of an attempt to give you classic chest hair than what you get out of these figures. The figure itself, for like a Mike Sharp, I think this was one of the first figures that I looked at. I'm like, I absolutely refuse to buy that. It may have been number 2. I think the first one I actually felt that way. If I can bring him out. Here he is. No Mascaris. I know I'm kind of bouncing back and forth, guys, and it's going to happen throughout the video. So you think about it. You go on to eBay, and you can buy yourself a pretty solid, good shape, good condition Iron Sheik figure for around $3. XOX Customs by Random Treasures comes out with this Mil Mascaris, which is basically just an Iron Sheik, and charges you 30 times that. Actually, more than that. So $3, 30 times would be $90. So 40 times that, 45 times that price. $130 to $145 figure? Yeah. It's absolutely insane to think that this $3 figure is going to cost you over $130. And I saw the figure, and what do I always say when it comes to characters I don't know anything about? A good figure is a good figure. And Mil Mascaris, I didn't know anything about the character himself, so that didn't do it for me. And he's in an Iron Sheik body pose, which to me is one of the absolute worst LJN action figures ever made. I was not eager to get this figure. This one was absolute horrendous. In fact, I don't know when this came out, but I just got this with a bundle of other figures in recently. And I want to say that figure had been out for probably a year or close to a year without me purchasing it. Now, once upon a time, as soon as Random Treasures figures hit their shop, I was buying it up. No questions asked. Now I'm being more cautious, I guess, with the type of figures that I buy. And I don't know if this was the next figure, but soon thereafter was that Iron Mike Sharp. Again, I guess he's a jobber type, and kind of like, a superstar like SD Jones, maybe not as much. Of course, SD Jones highlighted WrestleMania 1, so I don't really classify SD Jones as a jobber. Iron Mike Sharp, maybe Barry Horowitz would be like a better example, or an early going of like a 1-2-3 Kid before he became a superstar. The pose, not my favorite, but if you remember from the original LJN line, okay, it's not too far off from the Hercules Hernandez. So the pose, it's adequate. It's not the worst thing in the world, but with the awful look, the paint scheme is so simple. There's nothing spectacular. The shoddy chest hair, which is nothing more than a grease stain, and the below average fighting pose. There was just no way I would ever in a million years recommend a figure like this to anybody. For $130 plus, $140, it is absolutely insane. Now, I've talked about Ram Treasures having their highs. So, the Series 6 black card figures most definitely are the ones that if anyone was on a budget and they were desperate to complete this collection, absolutely, I would say go to Ram Treasures. But here's the thing. In the last year or so, I've actually taken all the Ram Treasure figures that are original Series 6 and put them back in their baggies and stapled them back up, because since then I've acquired all of the original figures with the original stencil on the feet, so I don't need the customs anymore. And of course, as the Ram Treasures custom shelves got more and more full, I had to find ways to make space, so I just kind of stacked them in the back. So at one point I bought a Rick Rude figure. I think I paid about $120 for the Rick Rude figure, and we're talking original. Now, the paint, it wasn't mint, but it was still in better shape than what I have with the Ram Treasures Rick Rude. So, better rubber, thicker rubber, less expensive, and original. I mean, how can you beat that? And you can go out on eBay right now and you can find yourself an original Big Boss Man in pretty good shape. Maybe not mint, but pretty good shape. And you could probably get it for around $200, $250. So, is really getting that $130 figure from Ram Treasures really going to be that much of a savings when it comes to original compared to a fake, essentially? I once considered Ram Treasures. I stopped considering them to be customizers. I started to consider them their own respective shop. You know, just like your Bandai and your Hasbro and your Toy Biz and basically any other toy company you could think of. But again, all they are simply doing is rebranding existing characters, existing figures, putting a new head on the mold and calling it a brand new figure when that's not the case. So, most recently, the Major Wrestling Figure Podcast has been coming out with their own version of the 8-inch rubber LJN action figures, vintage LJN figures of the 1980s. Some people who are obsessed or in business with or have done who made a lot of purchases from Ram Treasures, they don't like this. To me, you know, it's just one more company to kind of collect and, you know, shell out more money for. But if they do a much better job than what you're already getting from Ram Treasures, why would you not be absolutely ecstatic about what you're getting there? So one of the examples I give here from XOX Custom is their Demolition Tag Team. So, even though this figure is an original, I keep it with the XOX Customs because of the face paint. Now, you know that the original Axe from LJN had all red face on him. And you can tell that this is an original figure for two reasons. One, the skin is, well, three reasons. The skin is much darker, and it's a lot thicker. So, two reasons there. And number three, there's a distinctive smell that you find on a Random Treasures figure that you don't find on any of the original LJNs. The reason I keep this with the LJN customs among the XOX custom figures is because of the face paint. When you go on to XOX Customs page on Etsy, they have this mold of this exact paint job of Axe. Now, when they came out and they created their own version of Smash, there were some positives among figures like Smash, the Bushwhackers, Brother Love, Barbarian. Not a fan of Bad News Brown figure, but those figures completed an LJN collection from Series 6, figures that were supposed to have been made but were never finished. And again, getting smashed to complete demolition was amazing. But what did they do? They took that horrible Jesse Ventura pose, just gave him a complete opposite, and kept the look going the same. Some people might like the British Bulldogs. One guy has one arm up, the other guy has the other arm up. Okay. I'm not a big fan of that. I like differentiation. So, that was Random Treasures. The big rubber guys from a major wrestling podcast have come out with their own version. Now, here's another thing. Think about it this way. Three of these cost one of these. Now, so that alone should make it 1,000,000 times better for the Major Wrestling Figure Podcast to sell out their figures immediately. Second, Random Treasures just gives you a little cheap baggie for the package. I mean, I really never had a problem with that, but you like to collect the card backs as much as anything else. So, getting a real card back to boot, and it shows you, the different characters in the series, is absolutely amazing. So, this is one version of Smash. This is one variant. And he's kind of like your Axe with all red face. Obviously, the paint job is much different, which is incredible. So, that's one. And I know this is supposed to be a Random Treasures video, but I might as well throw in Wrestling Podcast as well, because their figures kind of align with this company anyway. So, second thing, this one here is another variant. This is more reminiscent to the picture that you actually get down there. So, again, you're kind of just sticking with your Hercules Hernandez pose. If it comes down to Hercules Hernandez pose or the Jesse Ventura pose, I'll take this 1,000,000 times out of 1,000,000. This is an enjoyable figure to use to an extent, whereas Jesse Ventura is just horrible. So those are two of your variants. Now this is an empty piece. Reason being, what I love about this, even better, the card back slides right out. Low plastic. You're not sitting there having to poke your finger to dent the package to let the figures or accessories out. Nope. Everything comes out super smooth. And what you don't get with Random Treasures is that beautiful mask. Now, this kind of gives you like your old school Axe from Series 5, 1988 release. Good looking figure. Again, this is him on card. And then you've got the other variant of Axe. Now, what I love about Major Wrestling Figure Podcast as well, in the next series, they've got guys like Andre the Giant, and they've got Macho Man coming out. Macho Man is one of the most important wrestlers in wrestling history. Hasbro gave him 4 amazing figures. That's fantastic. LJN gave him in my opinion, not necessarily subpar, but a mid of the rotation type of figure. Nothing that was super flashy. And I always said, if they gave him a better fighting pose, that figure could have been a whole lot better, in my opinion. And then Random Treasures, they come out with their sort of commemorative piece. Now, for those that don't know, when you look at the 1988 Series 5 release of LJN, you had Hulk Hogan with... let's see, here he is. You had 2 Hulk Hogans. One with red shirt, one with white shirt. And so Random Treasures, they came out with their own commemorative piece for Randy Savage. But what did they do? They took one of the most important wrestlers of my life and gave him the worst action figure ever created. Now, I've changed my opinion over time. I used to say that Rick Rude, LJN, was the worst. But no, I kind of feel like the WCW Galoob of Ron Simmons is possibly the worst action figure ever created. And that's exactly what it is. It's a WCW Ron Simmons action figure. And it is so frustrating that this figure has such potential to be so amazing. And the fact that they did this, it absolutely kills me. And I saw this figure, I'm like, I don't know to love it or hate it. I mean, aesthetically, it's a great look. Again, if they gave him a real pose, this could have been front line, maybe my favorite XOX Customs figure. But no, they gave him Ron Simmons and completely destroyed it. 100% waste of money. Never in a million years would I recommend this figure to anybody. Again, the Wrestling Figure Podcast, they are creating their own version of Randy Savage. If you've seen those photos, they're 10,000 times better. And I 100% picked those up, as well as both versions, both variants of Andre the Giant. So that's to come. And I showed the Hulk Hogan figure. So obviously, with the white shirt and red shirt Hogan from original Series 5, I take clothing over bearskin any day because it gives you that extra graphic, that extra design on the figure. That in of itself is already, far superior than why you would take away the shirt and just make it a bear figure and still charge as much money for this as you do for any other figure. Makes no sense. Then they came back with this exact same figure and put your early 1980s New Japan Pro Wrestling Hulk Hogan head on there. That's actually a figure I purchased from my buddy Eric last year. Still waiting on that to arrive. Where they took a Series 1 Hulk Hogan and put that New Japan Pro Wrestling head on there. And so much better based on the two designs. I'd rather have a Series 1 over a Series 5 any day because the body type, again, is the best fighting pose there is. This one, is just something new to add. I wouldn't probably classify it as the worst figure, but this is easily a mid-range figure in my opinion. One of the things that Ram Treasures had been doing this year, and since the year turned, I think at the time before I got this whole lot of figures in, I think there was like maybe 4 or 5 figures I purchased. I think I want to say Abdul the Butcher was probably the first figure I bought this year, and then maybe a couple months later I got the Jerry the King Lawler, or maybe I got Virgil and then I got Jerry Lawler. So Jerry Lawler, awesome accessory with the helmet, with the hat, with the crown. But he also has one of the best fighting poses, kind of like your Ultimate Warrior Series 6. Overall quality look, has that nice Memphis look to him as well. And then I saw that. And then you come across figures like, what's another good one? Dusty Rhodes, right? And you're thinking, okay, man, finally, maybe Ram Treasures is really starting to turn the corner and starting to put out some really quality action figures. But that's not the case because I've said it before, I feel like 1 out of every 6 or so figures that Ram Treasures creates is of high quality. Based on the fighting pose of this action figure, it's already an elite figure in that regard. Dusty Rhodes, it's an absolute legend no matter where he goes. Japan, WCW, WWF, AWA. He was on the circuit and the indie circuit and all that. One of the most popular wrestling family names ever. With his sons, Dustin and Cody joining in. And some of the designs you find on the figure, absolutely incredible. This was a solid one. But what do I talk about with figures like Virgil? I bought Virgil because, first and foremost, you kind of need that with the Ted DiBiase action figure. It looks so great. If he had an actual fighting pose to him, this would possibly be a 10 out of 10 figure for me. But I'm barely giving him or barely stretching it to a 5 out of 10. And why is that? Look at the pose. Why? Why would they do that? You're basically recreating a terrible figure that already exists. And it's a character that I really enjoyed as a kid. I've always loved Virgil. And even when I had my WWF Hasbro 4-inch figures, having matches, whatever, Virgil is always like one of the mega superstars that I enjoy using, right? And so to get this figure, it's nice for the collection, not worth the money. Disappointed. Here's a couple of additional figures. One of the things that I saw, and I came across this, and I absolutely despise the way that so many people are writing on this figure like it's the greatest thing they've ever seen, and I just don't understand it. And who are we talking about? Ron Bass. Are you kidding me? I have all of these Bruno Sammartino duplicates. I can easily send this figure or send a Bruno Sammartino to one of my friends who do customization for me. They could chop off the head, put a Ron Bass head on there, probably charge me $10 for a paint job, and for me to ship the package to them, ship it back to me, paint job, buy a new head mold, maybe $40 total, and you're charging someone $130 to $150 for this. One of the worst figures Random Treasures have put out. Bruno Sammartino is a adequate figure, but not exactly enjoyable. So the pose sucks. The best thing about this figure is the fact that he has an accessory. One of my lowest grades of an action figure. The boots are pretty nice, and I do like the little horseshoes on the back. So you do have certain aspects of any action figure that you can enjoy. It's just not a quality figure, not for no $130. I'm trying to show. So I'll go back to an earlier figure because I talked about some of the deficiencies of Random Treasures, and they include, breakage. Either the figures, the paint job is starting to crack or something like that. And no figure has had it worse than King Haku. If you actually look all over, everything from the ankle wraps to the pants, major breakage, even the wrist guards. It's insane how much this... And again, this figure does nothing but sit on the shelf. It's not like it's being played with, right? And to have that amount of paint loss, and a couple of friends are like, you know what, you need to send that back to them. I really should, because this has no value to it, not like this. And when you look at figures like Haku and kind of think about what the original Haku figure looks like, or how about the horrendous Bob Backlund? I've always said that Bob Backlund, 100% I understood and approved and 100% agreed. Bob Backlund deserved to have his own LJN figure. So when they're talking about creating Bob Backlund for LJN, I'm like, yes, please, thank you. And let me get this figure in. Now, if you guys go back to any of my old videos, like when I first started the channel, I was constantly giving Random Treasures high praise. And when I go back and I watch those videos, and I watch like the thank you video for Random Treasures, and it was just kind of like a brief video because I wanted to show off the new Bob Backlund figure. I was so grateful to get this figure in. When I saw it on the Etsy page, I wasn't impressed, but I was still at that point in my life where it doesn't matter what comes out. If XOX Custom sells something, I'm gonna buy it. I was still in that mindset, and I got the figure, and I was grateful for it because I was able to add a new member to the roster, but add a new collectible to the collection. But that's as far as it goes. Over the last year or so, when I've looked at my shelves, and I've looked at the different manufacturers or the different customizers and whatnot, this Bob Backlund has to go down as one of the worst LJNs I have ever seen. He would definitely have to be up there among the worst I think right now the only figure I would probably put him ahead of is Jimmy Snuka. Because I don't like the Jimmy Snuka LJN. I think the body pose is stupid. It's small. It just... At least they give him a B. Brian Blair fighting pose, which is something. But... Again, look at the tone, the skin tone of the cheapness of the rubber. If you seriously were to sit there and kind of push this arm in and hold it in, there's no doubt in my mind that rubber would eventually start to tear. Very poorly made. These, to me, I think most of these figures that you get from XOX Customs are, at best, $40 figures. And if someone wants to come out and say, you know what about the time it takes us to paint these? I don't know how they paint them. Do they actually one by one hand paint each and every one? Or do they have some kind of machine that kind of sprays the paint on where it need to be and whatnot? Because if that's the case, you really can't make that argument. And most of these figures are just terrible. One of the worst figures, and this is one that she kind of called me out on one day. I saw this on 80s Revolution, and I looked at the figure, I'm like, 2 out of 10. In my opinion, I think I was being very generous with that assessment of a 2 out of 10 because there was just no positives from this figure. Who is it? It is Ivan Putski. So, one of the arguments that Net had made was, well, this was, what he was famous for doing. Okay, so, as an alternative, Hulk Hogan was always infamous for, bending over in the ring and kind of doing the muscle pose, either before or after his matches, usually after a lot of time, and when Hasbro came out with their Series 2 release, they had the Bear Hug Hogan, and that Hogan is one of the worst playable action figures ever. Now, no collector, no fan, no child will ever say that they put that on their list of top 10 worst action figures because, you know what, you still can't open up the arms and use it as a playable figure if need be. You can still do bear hugs and punches and body slams. It's going to be annoying to hold the arms open, but aesthetically it still looks good. Because of the action feature, it works for the Hasbros. These are rubber figures. That is what Net and pretty much any customizer of action figures or any action figure creator period, doesn't have to be customization. It could be figures from Mattel or what have you. Remember that these are action figures. The intended purpose is play. Fighting pose is absolutely everything. If you were creating a 8-inch or 10-inch metal or ceramic or something like that sculpture, that would be perfectly fine. These are not sculptures, they're toys, right? They're made for play, and this right here, you cannot do anything with this. I've said it 1,000 times, I don't wrestle these guys. They're for my personal pleasure, just to kind of have them on display, and they look fantastic, great. But still, I still gravitate towards play pose among all else. It's the most important thing of any action figure. And when I see this, I'm like, why do I need to shell out my money to buy this? Well, you guys already know I did shell out my money to buy them. I just bought about 7 figures recently. And because I went through PayPal, I got a couple $100 off or whatnot. So she threw an extra 10% off. Which was nice for me because it saved me a little bit of money. It's nice for her because she doesn't have to pay Etsy fees, so she actually earns a little bit extra as well. So we both win. But at the end of the day, 75% of what I have are just not worthy of all our money. And when I go back to talking about these guys, Major Wrestling Figure Podcast, these figures are just as good, I would argue better made than the XOX Customs. Alright, so proper accessories, nice face paint, strong, sturdy rubber. If you would actually look at this, I couldn't tell from afar that this is not the original the original Axe from Demolition. the skin tone just meshes beautifully compared to a Ram Treasures skin tone. You know what I mean? Fighting pose is better. The texture is better. The price to me is everything. Like I said, 3 of these for 1 Random Treasures figures. And I think Major Wrestling Figure Podcast is probably going to put Random Treasures out of business. I exaggerate when I say that, but it's a fair assessment, guys. Random Treasures is really going to have to alter the way that they do business. I either find some way to fabricate these figures at a lower cost without jeopardizing quality, and because there's just no way they're going to be able to keep in business when you've got these amazing guys coming along with some fantastic figures. Not to mention, the figures that they've been coming out with are incredible pieces. So, Demolition, Andre the Giant, Ric Flair, Macho Man. Who else was another huge piece that they were coming out with recently? But these figures, they're a fraction of the cost that Random Treasures cost you, and they're better, and they're household names that everybody loves. Unless you're from the 60s, 70s, maybe early 80s, not many people are gonna know who Ivan Putski is. Ron Bass, I've never heard that name before, or if I have, I just don't remember them. Mil Mascaris, again, a lot of these guys, I'd have to go back into YouTube or something and kind of watch old 1980s wrestling matches to kind of figure out who the heck they are. So you take a guy like Mil Mascaris, who's just an unknown name to me. Terrible pose. I do like the paint scheme overall, but overall the quality just simply is not there. Alright guys, I kind of feel like I'm at the end of my video. Occasionally, you're kind of in the hallway walking around or something, and you're kind of talking in your head what you want to say in your video, and man, at that time I'm thinking to myself, and I have a million things that I wanted to talk about. But then when you come down, you sit down, you present the video, you really don't get everything out that you want to say, or you don't say it in the way you want to say it, so it kind of sucks. I just want to do one quick look around just to see if I didn't miss anything. Yeah, so I showed you the Terry Taylor figure before, and we got Terry Taylor, and then they followed that one up with who'd they follow that up with? I want to say Dino Bravo. So Dino Bravo, it's a good one. It's an adequate one. It's not great. It's good. I saw this pose, and one of my first thoughts was to ask her, hey, you going to come out with an El Gigante now? Because you've already got Mr. Perfect that you can use for Scott Steiner. You've got Dino Bravo that you can use for El Gigante. Let's go back to creating the WCW Galoob 2-ups, because I feel like those you can't do wrong, because you're basically imitating an already existing toy line. So with these new additions of these figures I just got in, I think I'm up to about, I want to say 50 figures. But not all of them are going to be utilized. Because I got a Bam Bam Bigelow, a Series 2 Andre the Giant. And then I've got from Series 6, Rick Rude, Boss Man, Warrior, and did I say Warlord already? Oh, Haku. So those guys obviously will not be included. So I'm just going to go off of basically the new introduction from Random Treasures. And if I include the WCW Galoob 2-ups, that should put me somewhere around 42 figures or something. So if I do make a My Favorite Random Treasures tournament, the videos won't take long at all. And based on what I've discussed today, you pretty much know, each episode who I'm going to select for the most part. And I'm going to do that. So right now, what is today? Today's Tuesday. Was that the 12th? I don't know. No, today's the 14th. No, today's the 7th. Hold on a minute, I gotta bring my computer up close. Eyesight is terrible. Sorry. So, Tuesday, November 14th. So, as of yesterday, I just posted Mattel Retro's review for Series 11. As you guys know, I had come back down here day after day after day, making 3 videos each day. So, I had plenty of videos in queue. And as soon as that Mattel Retros are done, I'm going to post this video. So, you know, won't really make sense or really won't hurt now because those videos aren't posted yet. But the goal is to knock out a couple of the Zombie Sailor series reviews. And I'm not going to do original San Francisco toy makers. I did a few videos last year. I felt like they should be sufficient. If anybody wants me to redo those figures again, I can. Just let me know in the comments. And I'll get that out probably either before the year ends or early next year. But right after that, I want to dig into the Ram Treasures tournament. Currently, Undertaker and Paul Bearer are the only ones I'm missing. So my buddy Eric, he was making me that same Undertaker and Paul Bearer before Ram Treasures even came out with their version. And I think it's the exact same figure anyways. But until he gets me on it, I can't include those 2 figures. Oh, they just came out with a Mr. T figure. Awesome pose. I really love that one. I don't know if I'm going to buy that one immediately or if I'm going to kind of do what I did with these lot of figures. Kind of wait until I get a bunch of figures and then kind of send her a request to do the same thing. And that way I can get a lot more figures for a more affordable price. Yep. So guys, all in all, grade-wise, I'd probably give Ram Treasures a C. Service, I still feel like service can't be beat overall. You really got to be one of those guys, though, like myself, who constantly buy from them and whatnot. I feel like the service for me isn't going to be so good if they watch this video, but you know what? To me, it's not necessarily criticism of their work ethic or anything like that. It's, you know, as a fan and as a consumer, this is just what I'm looking for as a buyer. And it's one of the main reasons why Ram Treasures lost my business in 2023 is because I just was not impressed at all with what they've been coming out with. If I wasn't so OCD about, you know, owning everything, I wouldn't have bought a lot of these figures. So service is quality, depending on who you speak to, because I've spoken to a lot of people who live in the Maryland area, and they go in and they try to do business with Net, or you know, maybe they want to do trade-ins or something, and they're constantly getting rude remarks or ripped off or something. I kind of feel bad for them, you know, because I only know of her through, you know, the Etsy page when we communicate. Many a times I've reached out to her, you know, asking her for certain figures that I'm interested in, and I kind of get a blow-off. Yeah, that's in the works, or something like that, and never hear any feedback later on. And you would think somebody who's probably the company's biggest buyer, that they should want to keep me as happy as possible. So I kind of joked around over the months and more the last couple years, actually, that how not talking about accessories, not talking about action figures, just championship belts. One of the jokes I talk about is I bought enough championship belts from Ram Treasures to keep them in business for 6 months. It's an exaggeration, of course it is. You know, the hyperbole is just simply the fact that I bought a lot from them. And, you know, different belt colors, different plate colors, etc. So I have a plethora of everything. And I kind of feel like I'm still like a second-class citizen. And yeah, you know, I don't have a sort of channel that's going to reach out to other people the way that some folks do. So, you know, they're going to have priority with recommendations and stuff like that, but it sucks. I'm really looking forward to what the Wrestling Figure Podcast guys do. You know, they've got their little 4-inch Bendy's figures. I bought a Jim Duggan from them, which I was, you know, ecstatic about. Not really too enthused about the other figures, but who knows? Maybe that could be a future collection. But for now, with their 8-inch figures, I was so impressed. And I was impressed before I actually got the packages in, and when I got them in, I do think that they will replace Random Treasures within the next year or so. There's just too many great pieces and too many positive aspects about their company that I like that I don't foresee Random Treasures being able to equal. So back to the grading system. Service is, great still. Products have hit a major downfall. I'm giving it a C because of that. And turnaround time, you get your stuff in about a week or week and a half or so. So maybe a B grade or something. I don't know. A company I used to give A across the board, they're to me a C at best. And there's still time for the company to make some necessary changes that's going to improve their products and bring in new buyers. But until they do something with their prices, they're never going to make the sales that they need. Comparison. I've talked about how I dislike the Iron Sheik action figure. I think the fighting pose is just terrible. But for Makari, I bought that Iron Sheik Corporal Colonel Mustafa action figure. The way that they painted that guy with his Iraqi military suit, uniform on and everything, getting that figure for the price I did, I think I paid like $20 or $25 for that figure, maybe even less than that. And all of that for about $20, and you think about these for $130. It's like, how? They can make them cheaper. They just don't. All right, guys. I'm gonna shut up. I mean, I don't know how much time I've been talking, but I feel like it's been a long video already. And I already know I didn't talk about everything that I wanted to, and I literally could do a weekly podcast on this because I just have so much to talk about. And it's one of those things where I don't want to just keep on going on because I don't want this to be a 4-hour episode. So I will end the video here, guys. Hopefully, you learned something. If not, no worries. Hopefully it was still a fun video regardless. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, and try and pass this one along. I mean, this to me is one of those fun videos I really been dying to make, and want this one to get to as many people as possible, because I think a lot of customizers or a lot of fans and a lot of buyers would really get a lot of use out of a video like this. So, all right, guys. Once again, thank you so much for your viewership, and I will talk to you in the comments and see you in the next video. Goodbye, everybody.